I just got a big shock 21 years ago. I was supposed to come to Norway for 6 months, and so this has been what my lecture is about. So it's a bit, how am I going to start now? I didn't know what to talk about. I knew you weren't allowed to talk about architecture, and I was going to talk about maybe the international background I've had. I lived in 7 different countries, and my dad worked with Air Canada, and I flew around the world and did all this weird stuff. And I've been, and that part of it, I was going to talk about my life in Norway. But then I realized that there was a program about me on NRK, about my house, so people saw how I lived there. And then this summer, I was getting text messages all summer that I was on TV every Saturday night about the Fogo. So I said, people kind of know a bit about me. But I just started thinking about what's on my mind now. And 3 years ago, there was a big change I'll talk about in my life that happened to me. And it's basically, I'm going to talk about decisions. And it's kind of fascinating. Is there any way to turn on that light there? Or, yeah. What I've been noticing is that I meet about 50 to 100 people a week. And I'm extremely curious in meeting people. And I'm always asking questions. I have friends of mine that they get shocked about how much I can find out about a person in about 3 minutes. And I just go in and deep and eat my mouth. I'm just very curious of the decisions people make. And I've seen some extremely poor decisions people make. You know, like I go back to Canada every 3 or 4 years, and you see a person you haven't seen in 15 years, and they're like 5 times the size as they were before, and you're like, okay, they've decided to eat this way every day, and it was like a collection, and this person made this decision, and this person made this, and they tell you their story, their life story, and it's all, you're thinking, there's good decisions here and there's bad decisions. And I was like, okay, how are people making these? And I started reading a bit more about decision making, and there's about 1,000 decisions you make a day. And I'm turning 50 now in November, and I was realizing the older and older and older I got, the more and more decisions I had to make, and it was exhausting me. It was like I was getting all these weird situations, and I just started realizing, did I have any principles of making decisions? And the only one I ever really reflected over was when Bruce Mao is a Canadian graphic designer. He worked with Rem Koolhaas on the small, medium, extra large book. He's worked on the Seattle City Library. And in his manifesto, when I went to architecture school, he said, today becomes your tomorrow. And that was actually the only kind of philosophy I had, and it was based on decisions I was making. I said, whatever I do today will most likely be what I do tomorrow, and it becomes a habit. And I noticed that in the good and bad situation. My bad habits, I kept doing them, and they added up to a pile of shit. And the good stuff, it actually was like, oh, 9 months later, it's like, oh, that actually works. So that became a principle. And there's another thing, coin flipping. I was 22 years old. I studied as an exchange student at the Rhode Island School of Design. A woman called Maria Aubach hired me in her office in Vienna. So I said, okay, Maria, I'm going to come for 3 months and work at your office, and then I'm going to take a year and a half off between my undergrad and master's degree. I didn't have a friggin' clue what I was going to do. So I finished at Maria's, said goodbye to my apartment, and I'm walking down to the train station, and I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going. And I'm like, and Maria said there's jobs in Berlin and there's jobs in Barcelona. And that was how I was making decisions. And I was thinking, and actually what had happened, the train came to Berlin, I jumped on the train, and that night I was like, I don't know anyone in Berlin. I don't have a job. And anyway, by the end of the week, by Friday, I had 4 jobs, had it all, and I chalked it up. People were thinking, okay, this guy's lucky, this guy's talented, and I was saying yes to that the whole time. But what it was, I read about what Seth Godin talked about, or John Fargo, there's a guy who wrote this book about creativity, and they asked him, what is the most important thing about creativity? And he was going to say intuition, but he blurted out fearlessness. And that's what I found out that I had as a 22-year-old kid. I was fearless. And I'm going to talk a little about how that kept it. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to, the most, the biggest insult people would give me, and I accepted it, was like, okay, you were very lucky. You met the right people. And like, I've heard this quote one time, I think Roosevelt said it, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And then talent. Talent is like, I've taught at like Cornell, Bergen Architecture School, all over the world. I've seen talent. I went to this high school with talented kids. They amount to nothing. To be like, very rarely do they amount to anything. It was hard work. So this is the point I was getting at. Another thing, and this is one thing I love about Norway. You guys make decisions like we do in Canada. So I was just reading a book by Erling Kagge. It's called Walking, Ogo. And my great-great-grandfather lived in northern Labrador. He was a fur trapper. He met Helge Ingstad. My great-great-grandmother was Mi'kmaq Indian. And they were fur trappers up there, and they were always in nature, so somehow it's in me. But he told a story about an Inuit community. When an Inuit gets bad news, they don't do anything. They put on their shoes, put on a jacket, and they walk as far as they can, whenever they get a problem, whenever they got to decide something very important. And then when they feel like the emotion has gone away, and you feel like you solve it, they put down a stick, they take a little break, and they walk back home again. And the length of that from their home to that stick is the magnitude of your problem or what you had to solve. So that decision, these decisions, so I've had to have some amazingly tough decisions, but what I've been doing by reverting to nature. And I've seen it, Glenn Gould, the Canadian pianist, there's a film about him, and there's this amazing scenes of him walking on the ice. And when I was a kid, we'd go to this cabin all summer, and we would spend, my father would drop us off, and we had no phone, and we had this big fire thing there. If anything happened, we'd light the fire. And he would fly up with the airplane. He was a mechanic with the pliers, and if there's anything wrong, we would light the fire. But that was how I grew up. And when we get to that cabin, I had two brothers. It was chaos and stuff. I would get my fishing rod, and I would walk as far as I could. So from 9 in the morning to probably 9 at night, bears everywhere. But that was where I did my best thinking. And then somehow in the last 3 or 4 years, I got away from that. And I started making bad decisions. But now I'm actually going back to nature. So nature's your friend, and actually nature has all the answers. There's another thing I read about this guy called Rolf Doppeli. He runs these things called the Zurich Talks. And I was reading a few books about him called The Art of Thinking Clearly. And he had something really, really interesting. He said he sat beside his CEO one night for 3 nights at a seminar. Every night the waitress was coming, would you like dessert? And he'd say, no. Next night, no. And third night, no. So he asked him, why do you say no to dessert? And he goes, well, it's in my circle of dignity. And he explained it. He goes, that decision's pre-made. Mm-hmm. Every time I'm asked about that, I say no, and it's just completely relaxing. And everyone's heard the stories about Barack Obama, same blue shirt every morning. So he doesn't get decision fatigue. So it's almost 31st of October, 10 years ago. I made a decision. My grandfather drank a lot. My father drank a lot. I had a daughter, my first daughter, and I said, I don't want this in my life. And it took me a year to quit alcohol. So changing, and I didn't have a problem. The woman I was living with, the mother of the children, she said, I've only seen you drunk 4 times. And then, and I said, no, I don't want this. It took a year to stop, and I was learning about breaking habits. People say it's 21 days. 21 days is an arbitrary number that there's nothing based in facts. You can actually change the habit in 3 days. Some take 250 days. And they found out actually the average to change a habit is 66 days. But back to my circle of dignity. The first year I was like, yeah, I'll have a drink on Friday. Crash. And I was like, and I have the notes still on my iPhone. 4 glasses of wine. And it was like 2 weeks later, I had a break. And then I traveled, and I was like, oh, I had 2 glasses of wine, 2 cognacs on the airplane. So it was really hard, because I was like, those moments I was weak. I was on an airplane, I was tired, I was jet lagged. Friday night, I had this shithole week of work and all those decisions. And so then I put it in the circle, and it was a non-negotiable. So that was actually, and since that, I can be like in a party, alcohol, and there was one time I wrote down how many times I was offered alcohol for free in a row. It was 53 days in a row as an architect. It was constantly given to me. I said, if I had to say no every day and challenge myself without pre-deciding that. So right now, this is where I'm at right now. And I don't want to be like a religious monk or anything, but I think there's... so. Next thing, think quick. Some decisions you have to make instantaneously, and you have to have confidence in yourself. This is going to be a hard story to tell because I'm kind of like, in my circle of dignity, I said I'm only going to tell half of it. So I'll just see how it is. I'm a big-ass skier. I didn't learn how to ski till I was 17. I got completely addicted to it. I blow all my money on heli skiing and doing all that stuff now. I just love it because it's the place where I get away from everything. So we're in Japan. There's like 15 of us. And somebody complains to the guide that this is boring as shit. So we're next day, the guide's like, okay, I'm going to take 3 of you guys up, and we're going to show you something really cool. And none of us 3 were actually complaining. We were like, fine, this is normal. So we get up, we hike up for 4 hours, standing at the top, and the guide goes, I'll go first, and you guys follow, one and one. And there's a bunch of magazines that wrote about this, because 2 years ago I had a lot of interviews about this. And standing at the top, the guy goes down, this huge 1,500 meter chute, about 50 meters wide. Guy goes, stops, American friend of mine goes. I turned to my other American friend, I said, you know what? This doesn't feel good. And I grew up in snow, like Newfoundland is full of snow everywhere. So I step out, I make 3 turns, and I see a snap in the corner of my eye. There's this huge blue light. That's all I can remember. And I look, I turn behind me, and there's a big crack, and the mountain's coming at me. And it's about 100 meters wide, snow soaked, and I can feel it. And there's a feeling that goes through my body. It's like, you're going to be taken in an avalanche. You're going to be killed. We have all of our gear on. This is the end of my life. And something inside me said, there's going to be a millisecond where I'm going really fast now, faster than this avalanche. But there's going to be a millisecond where I'm going to be at equilibrium, and then it's going to take me. And at that millisecond, I have to get out of here. And it was here to the wall right there. And I knew, and I had no doubt at all in my body that I can get out of this. And that was a great feeling. It was like, poof, it hit, and I went off, went through the thing. And then the first thought went through my mind, I took out my friends below me. And I looked up, the guy behind me, I couldn't see him. The next day, we had to dig out 2 other people that I took further down. The next day, they had a GoPro, the people below me, the people above me. They were crying, they were yelling and screaming. They were like, Todd, 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 screaming. They thought I was in the avalanche and dead. But the point is, thinking quick. I knew in my body growing up and as a child that I was jumping around rocks and I didn't have any doubt. And at that point there, I said, I'm going to train. And then every day now, as a part of my ritual, I'm in the mountains, I'm doing that. So there's this kind of feeling in your body knowing that you have it. So I think a lot of these decisions afterwards are not about the body, about the mind. So I was just in the Rocky Mountains for 3 days. We're designing a sauna on this backcountry ski area. And we went up there, and the funniest thing happened. There was a group of 20 men, 70 years old to 80 years old. And they were kind of obnoxious and stuff like that. And they were cocky because they were pretty wealthy. But as I was watching them, I was listening to their stories, I was like, this is kind of interesting. You're 70 years old, you're 80 years old. What's important to you now in life? And that's what I was like. And then there was one guy that told a story. He said the biggest thing that happened to him one time was he was sitting on a beach, and his life was all messed up, and his man said, okay, calm down. He goes, take a piece of paper, write down what's important for you. What's really important for you in your life? He wrote down his family and all that stuff like that. And then he goes, okay, write down what you did the last week. This guy did that. And he goes, look at those 2 things. Did you do anything that's important for you last week? He said, no, I didn't. And right there, he started changing his life. And that's the phase I'm at in my life right now. I've been living a life where flipping a coin, doing this and that. So, and then it's kind of weird turning 50 and kind of not really knowing what you're doing. And it's actually kind of uncomfortable. So the last year, I've been actually finding out what's important for me. And what I found about, I can mention the ugly word now, architecture. Architecture is not so important for me. And I said, I said no to everything for the last 6 months. We had 34 projects, 15 countries. I said, that's it. We're like stopping everything till I get my core values in place and be true to myself. And what is that? I still don't know the answer, but I'm like finding out that I love, like, in the mornings, I like getting up early, I like going in the mountains, I enjoy my daughters and all these things. And it's really interesting I think a lot of people ignore this, what's important. I found out I wasn't living a life for other people. I was kind of being convinced that I should be this way because other people think I should be this way. And it was a very shocking moment, actually. And one of my closest friends, he's a CEO of a huge company, and he spent this time in the mountains with these executives for 5 weeks, for over 3 years. And the only thing that came out of that is like to be true to yourself. And that's how you make your decisions. I get 3.5 minutes. Sometimes you make a decision and you live with it. And I see this a lot. All my friends, they've decided to do something and their ego is too big to back away from it. It's completely fine to undecide. Another one, this is the old guy, the 80-year-old guy. He said to me, he goes, like this guy had a coach. He said, more of, less of, MOLO. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, you got to get more people in your life that you like and less people that you don't. You got to get them out of your life. And he said, there's a couple of things like disrespectful people, you put up with it, and there's a point where you have to decide that these people are not doing any good. So a decision there, and that's actually been great for me. Yeah. This is Norway in a nutshell, complacency. I don't know if you know this word. Does anyone know the word in Norwegian? I don't want to insult Norway, but I see this quite often. There's, what's this word in Norwegian? Tilfreds. You're completely happy about how things are, and you're not challenging the status quo. And this is kind of scary. I have 2 daughters. They're 10, and the oldest one's turned 13. Everybody in Norway is using the same toothpaste. Everyone's using Zalo as washing their dishes. Everyone's going to kindergarten. Everyone's going to do this. It's like, okay. And everyone's accepting that, you know, it's like, and then my ex told me the other day, it was the nicest thing she ever said to me. For like, we've known each other since I met her. It was really funny because I came to Bergen on Monday, got a place to live on a Wednesday, and met her on Friday. And that was kind of the reason why I ended up staying. But she said the nicest thing to me the other day. She goes, you're not A4, and that's a good thing. But it took 20 years for her to accept that. She was hoping I'd work at Bergen Commune. I'd come home at 4 o'clock, but that wasn't working. So, and then she said, this is a beautiful thing. Our kids are going to be so, you know, they speak English, they speak Norwegian, they're going to Canada next week for 2 weeks. So that was like, but complacency, I see it all the time. And I've seen it in architecture students, and Ben Franklin said it one time. He goes, a lot of Americans, they die at 25, but they stay alive till they're 75. I see it all the time in students. You see them all great, about to graduate, all full of confidence, but then when they get out and they gotta do the hard work, and you're not a famous architect when you're 27, what the fuck's going wrong? So you're like, you gotta like, so this idea of challenging, doing the hard work, but I'm getting a bit off track now. So not deciding is probably the worst thing you can do. If you make a decision, you know, it could go right, it could go wrong, but actually the worst thing you can do is not decide and stay in the situation you are. I meet people all the time, they hate their job, they hate their wife, they hate this, but you gotta live up to, but it's facing these Facing the main. But that's a very serious part of it. But right now, you have 20 seconds left, and it's not all that bad. Like, you have to make decisions. We're all human. We all mess up. But the funny thing is, the best lecture I ever held was a few years ago in Oslo. They asked about success, and they had two like well-known architects that got up there, and like they were just like in love with themselves about talking about how successful they are. And I said, okay. And I winged it when I got up there. And I said, I didn't have any slides, didn't have anything. I said, I'm going to talk about my top 10 mistakes. And they're not just my mistakes, they're my most valuable mistakes and what I learned about them. And I think this is what bad decisions, make lots of them. Just move on and enjoy them, but look back and say, what the hell did that teach me? And really enjoy it. Okay, that was it. Thank you.